think businesses, you have to hold very, very tightly to your mission and very loosely to your model and your methods. You've got to be willing to change.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Radical Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Zeke Freeman. And today I've got a really special guest. So Doug Dameron is the founding and lead pastor for Orchard Church in Brighton. He spent more than 30 years in ministry, helping grow Orchard Church from a few people in his apartment to this thriving multi-site church. He's reaching thousands each week. And today he's helping churches around the country grow healthier through his work with Unstuck Group. So I'm excited to dive into that. It's kind of the business side of running churches. Doug, so super glad to have you on today. Over the past year, we've gotten to know each other a little bit through your expansion that you're helping lead at the Orchard Church here and getting to know your Orchard Church community and leadership team. So, it's been fun. Yeah, we're making something
It'll be more
cool.
fun once it starts going up, but yeah, it's just been fun.
But it's vision before bricks, right?
Right,
it's like,
exactly.
You're casting what we're doing.
Right.
So it's been fun to be a part of it. So welcome to the show. Thanks for inviting me to your house here at Orchard Church.
Oh, honored to do this. It'll be fun.
Well, cool. So let's just, for our group, and as we were talking before the show here, our audience is builders, dreamers, entrepreneurs, making cool places that have great impact. And I think Orchard Church is like the perfect business in a church analogy of this, because it shows how to do something that's grown into something that's impactful and done well. So maybe just walk us through a little bit of your story through building Orchard Church or following God and how He called you into this.
Yeah, well, we launched Orchard Church 21 years ago in the summer of 2005. Our family moved to Denver, Colorado. We had never lived in Denver. We weren't from Denver. We had no friends, no family. We literally knew nobody. But we realized that Denver is one of the top 5 most unchurched metropolitan cities in the country. That surprises a lot of people, but it is. I grew up in the Midwest, Oklahoma. You may see some OU stuff back here, so Boomer Sooner. And I grew up in Oklahoma, spent some time in Missouri and Indiana where I first pastored. So all Midwest, where there are churches on every corner. They're like 7-Elevens. You drive a mile and pass 10 churches. And we would often come out to Colorado because we'd go camping or we'd go skiing. Just love Colorado. Who doesn't love Colorado? And we would be looking around going, where are the churches? You drive for miles and miles and not see churches. And so we did our demographic studies and found out, that it's a very unchurched area. My heart is always to reach the unreached people, and Colorado definitely fell right into that category. So God called us here. So we parachuted in with our family of 4. Our kids were like 9 and 7 at the time, so they weren't a lot of help. and we just basically started in our apartment living room, and we started meeting people in our apartment complex and said, hey, you want to come over and talk about God, talk about Bible, have some conversations. And we thought we'd do that for several months, and about 3 weeks in, we outgrew our apartment, and then we met in the clubhouse of the apartment complex and grew to about 70 people. And then from there, we outgrew that, and we went to a rec center for a while, and then we moved into a 5A high school that was just opening, and that was in January of 2007 with about 100 people in a 600-seat auditorium. And we were like, oh my gosh, we felt like BBs in a pop can. How are we ever going to fill this? And basically, God said, well, you're not, but I am. Yeah. And so long story short, we met in that high school for about 11 and a half years and went from 1 service to 3 services. We were running about 1,700 people. And then we had the opportunity to purchase land right next to the high school and build this building and that we're sitting in today. And we've been in this about 8 years, and our church has over doubled in size since we moved in here. And God has just really blessed and blown us away, honestly. We're trying not to screw it up. So last year in the fall, we celebrated our 20th anniversary as a church, and God's done more than we could ever imagine, that's for sure.
When you're in that apartment building with 4 people or whatever gathering, did God give you the vision for all of this?
No.
In any way?
No, He did not. I remember some people asking me, like in the first couple of years when we first started the church, well, where do you see the church in 10 years? And I said, well, maybe if we could have a small building of our own, maybe 300 or 400 people, be established, self-sustaining, that would be great. And I think God just laughed at that because he had way bigger dreams and vision than I did, and grateful for that. We really say we didn't start anything. We really just joined God where he was at work, and we've just been trying to be faithful and let him do what he's going to do.
So when we were talking earlier, there's a lot of pastors out there, entrepreneurs out there that have this big drive and vision to create something big.
Yeah,
and they feel called to that.
Yeah.
And there's that season. I call it like the sacred delay, where it's a gap between what you felt called to and where you're at, and that walking through that season can be really hard for those pastors that feel like they're called to reach the world. What advice do you have to them as they're in that season of 4 people in an apartment trying to?
Yeah, well, like I said, the reason that we were so interested in Denver and why God called us here is because there's so many unchurched people here. Most demographic studies will say that 90% of the people in Denver metro area claim no church affiliation whatsoever. And so we feel like we're on the mission field.
Yeah.
A lot of times we talk about sending people, to Africa and Philippines and places, and we support a lot of those works for the mission field, but really Colorado is a mission field.
Yeah.
And so although we never had a big vision of, being this size of a church and this size of a building and size of a ministry, we've always had a huge vision to reach the people in our community, which we believe there's about 100,000 unchurched people within a 10-minute drive of this facility. So that's always been our focus.
Wow.
So, we can look at, the 7,000-8,000 people that consider Orchard their church home, if you ask them where they go. Now, they don't all show up on the same Sunday. You only get that on Christmas and Easter. Your CEOs, Christmas, Easter onlys. We sometimes call them Creasters. Not Keisters, Creasters. So we don't get them all on the same Sunday, but we can look at 7,000-8,000 people that consider Orchard their home, or we can look at, the 100,000 people we've still yet to reach. And it's not like there's tons of churches doing that. And so we've always had that as our focus. The Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required, and we've been given a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
And a lot of work to still be done.
And what were some of, looking back in those early days, some of the challenges that you guys had to face in that growth curve?
Been no challenges. Been just smooth sailing, no problem. We were portable. And this blows people away, church planters, because church planters nowadays, it's like they got to have a building, got to have a facility, like in the first 2 years. We were portable for 13 years. Set up, tear down, every week, from our apartment to the clubhouse, to the rec center. We were met in the same high school for 11 and a half years. So that presented a lot of challenges to stay with it, get up early mornings, set up, tear down week after week after week. Yeah. So that was definitely a challenge. I had somebody ask me, we were about 3 years into the church getting started, and they were like, how's it going? I'm like, well, it's going really good. God's really blessing. And that was when we really didn't have a staff. It was pretty much me and my wife, my kids. We had some great volunteers, but we couldn't hire a big staff. Yeah. Now we've got about 35, full-time on our team. So somebody early on asked me, so, how's it going? I said, it's going great, no problems. Well, then we started hiring a team and a staff, and it was easy to answer that question because getting the right people on the bus and in the right seats has probably been one of the biggest ongoing challenges in 21 years.
Yeah.
That's something we're always working on. And sometimes people join the team, and they're a really great fit for a season. But because our church is so rapidly grown, we've grown at about 20% every year, rapid growth. Sometimes people's leadership capacity, they're not able to keep up with that. So sometimes we have to move their seat, or sometimes maybe it's just not the right fit. So that's probably been one of our biggest challenges, is getting the right team.
Yeah, and in a church environment, there's probably a little this, emotional context of, I'm not going to be as harsh about setting the lines and expectations. I don't know. I mean, I would.
Yeah, we call it nice church.
Nice church,
Yes.
Versus, hey, you're not actually doing your job.
Right.
And we have a job to do.
Right.
We've been called to do that.
Yeah.
How do you approach that in your business of running a church?
Right.
All right, guys, I've got one quick favor to ask. If you've been enjoying Radical Hospitality, if these conversations have inspired you, encouraged you, or helped you think bigger about what it means to create spaces that truly serve people, would you hit the subscribe button? It's a small thing, but it makes a huge difference for our show and for our team. We're working hard to bring some of the most thoughtful entrepreneurs, builders, and visionaries in hospitality, people creating meaningful spaces all over the world, and your subscription helps us keep getting better every single week. And if you're someone who's dreaming about building a hospitality project of your own, that's what we do at Root Architecture every single day. We help clients design and bring those spaces to life. You can book a discovery call with me or someone on our team at therootteam.com. Thanks so much for being a part of this journey. It really means a lot to me. Subscribe, stay with us, and let's keep building cool stuff that serve people well.
Well, where we start is we have a very clear mission that God has called us to. I mean, we talk about it all the time. I mean, you can't come to Orchard Church and not hear it several times. It's on the wall, when you walk in, and our mission is to be people helping people find and follow Jesus. And so everything that we do runs through that filter. And we believe we've been called to the greatest mission there is, to make a difference in somebody's life now and for all eternity. And there's not a greater calling than that. Yeah. And so, you think about businesses and, that are for profit. We're nonprofit and try to make money and all that. And, that's great. But people's lives are at stake. Eternity is at stake here. And so if businesses should take seriously their job and what they do and holding people accountable, shouldn't it be even more so that way when it comes to God's work and kingdom work? So we love our team. We love working together. We try to put people on our team that we actually want to hang out with. It's fun to work with people you want to hang out with. And but we have a lot of fun. We say it this way: we play hard, but we also work hard, and we hold each other accountable. And we've always had a very high evaluation culture. And so if you don't want to be evaluated, if you don't want to set goals and try to reach those, it's probably not going to be a good fit here, because we love to set a goal, pray about it. We have a value. We say we work as if everything depends on us, and we pray as if everything depends on God. We do everything we can do, and we let God do what we can't do. And so, we believe in accountability, and we're really big on developing leaders. And you can't develop people in their leadership capacity if you don't hold them to some expectations and some standards and challenge them to grow. I've had to be challenged to grow. I'm continuing to grow. I mean, I've never pastored a church this size. I've never led a staff this size. If I don't continue to be very specific and intentional in growing in my leadership, I'll get left behind. I'll be the wrong leader. And so we've tried to cast that with all of our team. We say, clarity is kind, and to be unclear is to be unkind. So we try to be very clear with our expectations and hold each other to a high standard, because we're doing work that really matters. Forever. It's a big deal. So we're a family, but we also are a team.
Right.
And the best teams hold each other accountable.
In addition to motivating, paid staff, you're motivating hundreds of
volunteers, right?
That have to align with a vision. Otherwise, they're not showing up each week. And one of the things I think about in my business and look to good pastors like yourself is you guys are casting visions that are so good that people will volunteer to show up. Shouldn't I, as a business leader, be casting a vision that at least they want to show up, even if they're getting paid to it? But I think it's such an important thing, whether it's you're running a church or running a coffee shop or an architecture firm. Is are you casting a vision that's big enough that encapsulates your people to want to show up?
Right.
How do you focus on? I mean, you're given through the Bible, obviously, the biggest vision, which is casting and helping people, through eternity. How do you make sure that that's permeated through your culture, and how do you suggest other business owners do that with the work that they do?
Yeah, well, I think it's got to be something that you don't just embrace, you don't just support, but you embody. You know, I mean, like, this is who you are. This is what God has called you to. And it starts with the leader, and then those that you invite onto your team. And I say a good vision, a good mission is going to both compel and repel. It's going to compel some people. Oh man, I want to be a part of something like that. I mean, that's bigger than myself.
Yeah.
But for others, that might be like, oh, you know, that's so strong. I don't know if that's really what I want to be a part of. One of the things we run into a lot is we consider ourselves a reaching church. You know, our target is to reach the unchurched, de-churched of Denver. We're not trying to go after Christians. We're not trying to steal people from other churches. Yeah. Now, we're grateful when God calls other believers to be a part of our ministry because they believe in our mission and they want to be on mission with us. But, you know, unfortunately, sadly, I think too many churches and businesses sometimes can get inward focused instead of outward focused. And we are unapologetic about we are trying to reach the unchurched, de-churched population that is all around us. And if you want to be a part of that, then let's go. You know, we're not trying to, you know, cater to the believers that are already here and make them feel good. And we're not trying to create a Christian country club. Yeah. You know, we're not, you know, there's the old saying that the church shouldn't be a cruise ship. You know, it's a battleship. Yeah. I like to say the church shouldn't be a cruise ship. The church should be like a aircraft carrier. You know, you come in, you get trained, and you get sent out, and then you come back. And each week we want to send our people out into the community to make a difference, to reach more people. People and businesses get too inward focused versus outward focused. I can see how that applies in the church, but I know there's a place where this applies in our individual lives and in our businesses that we run. How would you speak to people running businesses on being too inward focused versus not being enough outward focused? Yeah, you know, I was just, I did a talk a couple days ago about this, and I was reminded of one of the biggest business failures in history, and everyone will know about it, Blockbuster. Blockbuster Video, you remember, we date ourselves here. Remember Friday night was all about going to Blockbuster, standing in line, waiting as people are returning their video, hoping that's the one you want, and you know, the good old days. And everybody thought, I mean, that was going to last forever. And a little company called Netflix offered Blockbuster to buy them. This was, I think, around the year 2000, for $50 million. And Blockbuster said no, because at that time, Netflix did mail order DVDs. Yeah. And Blockbuster believed so strongly in their business model that people will always want to go to the store and pick out their movie. I think we all know how wrong they were. They said no. 10 years later, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy, no longer exists. Netflix now is worth over $400 billion. What was the problem there? They got inward focused on a method that they believed was always going to work. And we say it all the time in the church world, but it's also true in the business world. Our mission never changes, but our methods have to continually change. And we say, we're married to our mission, date our model. You know, and I think that's true for businesses. You've got to be, what you're trying to provide for people doesn't change, but how you provide it has to change. And so, you know, I work with a lot of churches through the Unstuck Group and consulting, and one of the things we find that happens to churches when they start to plateau and decline is they fall in love with how they do church more than why they do church. And I think businesses, the same thing is true. You know, you've got this product, you got this service you're trying to provide for people. That always stays at the forefront, but how you deliver it has to adjust and change. What if I really like the acoustic music set? Yeah. Well, you may like it, but that may not be what the public likes. Right. You know, we tell people all the time, you know, people say, why do you do the style of music that you do? We say, well, that's what connects with most of the people in our community. If bluegrass music all of a sudden became the rave, then we would be doing that style. You know, we're going to provide music because we're supposed to worship the Lord, but how we do that I grew up probably like you, hymnals every week, Just As I Am and Amazing Grace. And I love that. But that's not what's connecting with people today. And so I think businesses, you have to hold very, very tightly to your mission and very loosely to your model and your methods. You've got to be willing to change. I mean, AI is the big thing now. And some people are aggressively embracing it and others are resisting it. And I think those that resist it are going to get left behind.
That's super interesting. How is AI being utilized in the church world? And should it be, I guess?
Yeah.
If we dive into that a little
Well,
bit.
I just let AI write all my messages now. Joking. We've started using AI a lot. I mean, it really helps, to put together, maybe like a proposal really well, to write, really well thought out emails, to run things through. If you're doing articles, we do a lot of advertising, what's a better way to say this? If I'm looking now for an illustration for my message, I used to have to go to my library and thumb through books, and I can just put in hey, I'm looking for an illustration on this, and it'll give me several. And it's working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
It doesn't write my message, but it is a supplement and it's a resource that I think it'd be unwise not to utilize that. The message still comes from the Word and from God, but you can get some things in there. It really is helpful to get statistics and demographics and data, just
it's
really,
one of these
really
things
quickly.
that's and I think the church is the perfect place of it. It's you want to hold your inspiration and your humanity in the words that we're speaking, and we don't want to just become Chat GTP robots.
Robots.
This out. I'm in the process of also writing my first book, and I'm really struggling with this of how do you make sure to maintain your artistic value in the work that we're doing, and utilize resources and technology.
Absolutely. I think it's a balance. I think it's a tension to manage, not a problem to solve. And it's just there's got to be a balance to it. I know some churches and businesses are against it. I'm not for it. No way. And others are fully embracing it. And there are some pastors probably just letting AI write their message. And I think that's an extreme. You take in what God's doing in your life out of it. But I think it's got to be a balance. The Bible talks about that. It says false balance is an abomination to the Lord. It's all about balance.
And I think that's probably true in your art and on the pulpit.
Absolutely.
Is how are we using these things to be more impactful, be more creative, and not losing the human component of it. It's an interesting time.
It's a very interesting time. Yeah. But things are always changing. We're in a fast changing world. Hardly anybody has a landline anymore. But I remember there was a time that people resisted cell phones, and I don't see anybody walking around with flip phones now. You got to be willing to, embrace the technology and the changing times, but within reason and balance.
Yeah. What other type of technology have you guys found helpful in growing Orchard?
Oh, wow. We have a whole team that deals with all the technology. Most everything we do, we're relying on technology and internet. We have a production team and department. We have lights and music, and things are programmed out. All week for Sunday. It doesn't just happen. The church fairies don't come in and just magically make all these things happen. And so we've embraced technology a ton. We obviously use social media to be out there in the public and letting people know that we're here and the series we're doing and what's going on. And so we fully embrace technology.
Yeah. And so the team behind that and what it takes to run a church like this, you mentioned you have a media team, you've got lighting and sound.
And right.
What are it sounds like probably communication is a core part of this. What are y'all's strategies behind communication and ways that you're putting messages out there and reaching today that's working?
Yeah, we do a lot of series. some churches do, like expositional teaching, books of the Bible, verse by verse. We're a little bit more on the topical. I kind of call it topositional. We're always preaching the word, but we try to package it in a way, especially that it connects with that unchurched, de-church crowd. I could teach the Bible as deep as you want to go. I've been to seminary and done the deal, but unchurched, de-church people, it just flies right over their head. I mean, they don't know the difference between Job and Job. They're like, what is that? And so we're always trying to stay faithful to the word. One of our values is we always ask, what does the Bible say? So everything we do, the Bible is the authority and the foundation. But we try to be like Jesus. Jesus was very, very creative in how he connected with people through his messages and communication. He used everything around him. He used water and fish and loaves and people and rocks. I mean, he was always, creative in illustrations. And so we try to do the same today, through pictures and video technology. We actually started using AI a lot of times to provide like a backdrop. Like if I'm reading a passage, I recently taught on Jesus feeding the 5,000, the fish and loaves, and we had AI create a scene with multitude of people on a hillside, and Jesus is, there feeding these people. And AI can do that. Now you got to be careful because sometimes you have like 12 toes, and you got to like check that stuff. Right. Like, why do they have 3 legs? What's going on here? But yeah, we've been able to create some really cool scenes that way. We're doing a series right now leading up to Easter. We're called Famous Last Words, and we're looking at the final words of Jesus on the cross. And so last week I taught on where Jesus said, my God, why have you abandoned me? And the Bible says from noon to 3 o'clock, the sky fell completely dark. There was a total eclipse. So AI helped us create that scene, the crucifixion with the people around, and it was dark in the middle of the day. So we're not afraid to, it brings things to life for people.
Yeah, it helps people visualize and illustrate what you're talking
Absolutely.
about.
And we do a lot of pictures, we do a lot of videos, we do a lot of video stories. We always want to celebrate what God's doing in people's lives. That makes it real. And so we capture a lot of stories of our people where they share their testimony of their life change, and that's really impactful for people to see those things.
So speaking of being creative and using the things that are at your resource here, you guys are creating something really special adjacent to your existing Orchard Church building right now. And I think that relates uniquely to your situation of where the building's located. So talk to us a little bit about the expansion opportunity that you guys are doing here and how this came about.
Yeah, so, as we were approaching our 20th anniversary of the church, we really wanted to send the message to our congregation, to our church, that this is not a finish line. God is not done with us. We're just getting started. The best days of Orchard, we don't believe, are behind us. They're ahead of us. And again, to whom much is given, much is required. We've been blessed to be a blessing. We're an anchored church in the northeast area of Denver. To our knowledge, we're probably the largest church in northeast Denver, and we feel a great, burden and responsibility to reach the people of our community. And so, as we were approaching that 20th anniversary, we said, we need something fresh to direct the vision. Where's God taking us the next 20 years? What's that going to look like? So that people don't just get complacent. It's not like, okay, we're good. We've arrived. And so we started praying about it. And one of our values that we're really passionate about is we say we want to be a church for our community, not just in our community. We want people that have never walked in the doors of Orchard Church to love Orchard Church because of the impact we've made in our community. So we've got about 15 local community partners that we support. We're constantly out in the community doing outreach events and serving and partnering with other things that are going on in the community, just to love on our community, to say, hey, we're here for you. We're for you. It's cool that times I have some people walk up to me, they meet me in the community, and they're like, oh, I love your church. And I go, oh, how long have you been coming? Oh, I've never been, but I love your church. And I'm like, well, what do you love about it? And they're like, well, your people are just amazing. They're so kind. And what you guys do for the community. Yeah. And it's like, that's a win. That's just awesome. And there will probably be a day and time where God's going to get a hold of their heart, and they're like, maybe we should check out a church, or maybe they're going through a trial or something. Where do you think they're going to go? And so we want to make a difference. So loving our community, being for our community. So we were like, well, what can we do? And so one of the things we considered is, what can we do the other 6 days a week outside of Sunday to connect with our community and not just wait till they show up to a service? Yeah. And that's when we came up with the idea of a coffee shop that would be open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, with an indoor kids play area, like the largest in our community. So, we're hoping to put McDonald's and Chick-fil-A out of business. Sorry. This thing will probably be like 4 times the size of any of those. And where our community can come in and they can kind of get a first touch taste of Orchard before coming to a service at Orchard. And so that's what we came up with, and reached out to you guys and said, hey, help us with this, because you guys had done some other coffee shops with Manna Worldwide. And the beauty of that is Manna Worldwide feeds about 15,000 kids a day in 40 countries. We've supported them for years. We love their ministry. Now they're starting to do coffee shops, so we connected with them, and they're going to run the coffee shop. So not only is it going to be a blessing in our community, but the proceeds are going to go back into feeding kids around the world. It's just a win-win-win. And that's kind of how we came up with it.
Love it.
And we're super excited about it.
Yeah. The more I've gotten to know, you and Orchard Church, the more impressed I've been with, the willingness to step out and do this.
Yeah.
One of the things I think, we look towards in our churches and our leaders is, we're showing up. We are the church, and we're called to outreach. But 6 days a week, we're heads down in a business,
right,
doing the day-to-day. And, I think that's where the church needs to be moving into this marketplace, into showing us, all right, well, how do you actually run a business that is a kingdom-minded business, and what does that look like, versus just showing up on Sundays. And so I think it's a brave move to make for a church, because, it's not easy.
Right. It would be easy for us to just keep doing what we're doing and not take on a project like this. But, God didn't call us to easy. Right. He calls us to take steps of faith, and this is a step of faith for us. And, we always want to be taking bold steps of faith, and this is where we believe God has taken us. And, Jesus' final words to the church was go. Go and make disciples. He didn't say, wait till they show up here. Yeah. And so this is one of our ways we see that we can go. And we're right next door to the high school we met at for 11 years. And there's like over 2,000 students there. They have open lunch. So we're going to connect with those students every day through the coffee shop. We've got 4 schools within a quarter of a mile of this building. Parents, moms dropping off their kids and dads that can come by, go to the coffee shop. Moms can bring their kids in. They can play. They can have some coffee. So we're really excited about it. Yeah. Really excited about it.
Well, every time I leave here, I usually Google to get a coffee, and it's like a 30-minute drive.
Oh, yeah. There's not a lot right here.
And so I think, going where, there's opportunity is great.
Right.
I think this is, set up to be a great opportunity as you're setting up a model of essentially what a kingdom-minded business should be. What are some of your thoughts? And I know you're coaching, other people, other churches through this of, how do you actually, when speaking to other, business owners, which are in your community as well, how do you talk to them about running a kingdom-minded business, and what should that look like?
Well, if they're a Christian, if they're a believer, what I tell them is, if God has called you as a believer to run a business, you have the same mission we have. To help people find and follow Jesus. Mm-hmm. God's just given you a different platform. Sometimes I actually am pretty jealous of some of our Christian business owners, because they get to be out in the community more than I do. They have more opportunity than I do to rub shoulders, with people that don't know Jesus. As far as I know, all of our staff knows Jesus. There's a couple of them, I'm not sure. I'm just kidding. So I encourage, business owners that are believers to understand that's not just your business, that is your mission field. That is your ministry. First to your staff, to take care of them and love them, and then, your customers and the people. Treat them like Jesus wants you to treat them, and I believe God will bless that.
Yeah.
So don't just look at it as your business, look at it as your mission field. Look at it as your ministry, your calling.
So you might know we're in the process of opening up a hotel. We've been working on this project for the last year and felt kind of called into the hospitality sector.
Right.
I think there is this overall need to be more hospitable in our services and servicing people, and I believe there's a biblical calling on this as well. Mm-hmm. When you hear radical hospitality, what does that mean to you? And what do you think the Bible has to say about that?
Well, the Bible has a lot to say about how we treat other people, to love others as you love yourself, and to be kind and to be courteous and to be hospitable to people. I mean, Jesus was. I guess one of the things I would say is hospitality is free. It doesn't cost you anything extra to just be nice, to be kind, to be caring, to get to know people and build those relationships with them. I mean, Chick-fil-A has kind of figured that out, it seems like. You just feel different when you go there, and that's part of their culture that they have created. And I think it would serve businesses well to just have that mindset. It doesn't cost you any extra, but it can make a huge difference in your business to go over and above and to do the unexpected, to care for people and surprise people with your hospitality. Is
there some areas that you guys have done that in Orchard Church?
Oh, big time. Oh, yeah. We have a whole hospitality guest services team. Most studies say that people will make it, and I think this applies to businesses too, that most people will make a decision in the first 7 minutes if they're going to come back to that church or not. Well, 7 minutes, the service hasn't even started.
Yeah.
That means how they find your property, your facility, is the signage clear? Is it easy to find? When you pull into the parking lot, is there a space for a first-time guest? Are there people smiling and waving at them? When you pull into our parking lot, there's a sign that says, first-time guests, turn on your flashers. And we have a special place for them to park. When they get out, people greet them and welcome them. They tell them this is the door, it's probably easiest to go in. As soon as they get up there, it says, new here, start here. And hey, we're glad you're here. We give them a gift. We walk them around. Here's the doors of the auditorium. If they have kids, here, we'll help you check your kids in. Just going that extra mile. And that is probably one of the number one things we hear when people come to Orchard. We do guest surveys. Every week we send them a follow-up text thanking them for coming, and a little guest survey with a few questions. And the number one response we get is, this church was so friendly, so hospitable. I felt welcome from the moment I drove in the parking lot. And we've been very, very intentional about that. And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
Yeah. I would say walking into churches that have, an orchard-style greeting versus, walking in and you can see there's 10 people that know each other.
Right. And they're looking at you like, who's this?
I've been in both and walked out.
Sure, yeah.
I've also been in restaurants that have done the same, where I've walked in.
Yep.
Maybe a hotel might be a better example. I went to a hotel, it was a surf hotel in El Salvador, and a friend of mine brought me out there. And when we got there, there was a guy in a pair of surf shorts walks out with a silver tray and a couple of champagne glasses for me and my dusty buddies, and that were young kids. And it was like he made us feel seen and welcome. I've also walked into other hospitality establishments where I've had to spend 20 minutes looking for a front desk and banging on the bell.
Right.
And people wonder, why are people not coming back to my business? Or why are people not coming back to my church?
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're running a business or a church. People need to be seen, and there is a huge. If we're trying to grow something, there's a huge need that when you're showing up, that this is your place to welcome somebody.
Absolutely. We just got back from vacation. Every year, first week of March, we go to Cabo.
Okay.
And we go to the same place every year. And we've taken a lot of different friends, with us. And one of the things that everybody talks about the most every time as soon as you show up at the resort and you're going and you're checking, of course they welcome you as soon as you get out of the car, and they're taking your bags and all of that. And then you go to the desk to check in, and they always come up and they say, hey, what can I get you to drink right now? Margarita? While you're checking in. But you got to be careful, because if the check-in takes too long, you can get in trouble. Because they'll just keep bringing them.
Yeah.
And they're like, we haven't even paid yet. And that first impression makes a difference.
Yeah.
So moral of the story is, welcome people with a margarita. No,
we got to implement it in the front entry.
We do coffee. We do coffee, just to be clear. We do, and a lot of times people say, well, where do I pay? It's like, no, it's just free. It's we want to love on you. It's not free to us. We pay for it, but we give them coffee. We have donuts. We've actually had people tell us they chose to come to Orchard over other churches in our community because we have better coffee and donuts. They said that's what
gets you to Jesus. Right?
Exactly. Now they're like, that's what got us to come back. And it's like, what? There you go. So no, hospitality is huge.
Yeah.
And it's sadly, I feel like it's getting harder and harder to find. Prices are going up. It's crazy. You go to a restaurant now, you can't walk out of there, for less than like $50, $60 a couple. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
And yet I feel like service and hospitality is going down. It's like you're paying more and you're getting less. And so
not hard to distinguish yourself right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I go out of my way when I go now to a restaurant or somewhere and someone is very hospitable and very caring, and they actually act like they're glad you're there. I always call over the manager, which usually freaks out the waiter, like, am I in trouble? And I'm like, no, I want to say something. And I say, you need more workers like this. You need to give this person a raise.
Yeah.
Because it's sadly getting harder and harder to find. And it will absolutely set you apart from other churches, other businesses. It absolutely will.
So I didn't want to lean you too much there, but I think we're in agreement. Right? Radical hospitality is important.
Oh, absolutely.
In your business, in your churches.
Absolutely.
You were talking with me before the show about some other frameworks that you do through the Unstuck group. This idea of the vine and the what you call it,
trellis,
right? And the trellis.
Trellis and the vine, yeah.
What is the frameworks other frameworks that you're walking through with business owners to help grow?
Well, I've heard many times that the reason that most new businesses fail is not because of a lack of a success, but it's because of too much success that they're not able to sustain. They can't fill the orders. They can't meet the need. And the reason is because they don't have the right infrastructure in place, the systems, the processes, the organizational side behind it. And so I kind of illustrate it this way. It's the trellis and the vine. If you've got a vine in your garden, vines have to have something to attach to grow. And the vine can only get as big as the trellis. And so you say, well, what's more important, the trellis or the vine? And the answer is yes. Because a trellis without a vine is just a trellis, but there's no life.
Yeah.
It's pieces of wood. What good is a vine without a trellis? Because it'll never get off the ground. And so the bigger you want the vine to be, the bigger the trellis has to be. And so I look at, the trellis is the infrastructure, it's the systems, it's the processes, it's the people, it's the team, and then the vine is the life. It's the customers. For the church, it's the people we're trying to reach. The church isn't the building, it's the people, and it's the spiritual decisions and what God's doing in people's lives. And I'm used to mainly talking to churches, trying to help them. And what happens is some churches are really good on the spiritual side, the vine side, but they're not good on the trellis side, and they wonder why they're not growing. Other churches, sadly, are just about the business side, the trellis side, and they neglect the spiritual, and God's not going to bless that.
Yeah.
They're both equally important, and I think that's true for business as well. You've got to be able to have the right systems, processes, and infrastructure to sustain the growth of the company.
And I think that all kind of is a wonderful analogy back to these things that we've been talking about. Yeah. Meaning, purpose, vision, people, hospitality, and business structure. How are we delivering? How are we documenting systems to make sure that we're operating with excellence?
Right.
Which I believe we've been called to do in all areas of our life.
Right.
And I think God's going to bless business owners, entrepreneurs, if we're looking at both of those just as much as He's going to bless a church or a community.
Right.
It's stepping this outside of a Sunday church. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited to be in partnership with you guys and seeing this come together. And I'm really excited to see what God does. And I just know in my heart like He's going to bless this community and continue to bless your church with the work that you're doing. So thank you, Doug, for inviting me to be a part of your journey. Thank you for taking some time and talking with the radical hospitality entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. So if people want to be in touch with you, this community, what's the best way for them to?
Well, Orchard Church, our website is easy. It's orchard.church. No .com or anything. It's just orchard.church. That's our website. Yeah. And if you want to reach out to me personally, you can reach me at pastor@orchard.church.
Wonderful.
Simple enough. We can help in any way. But yeah, honored to be on it. Thanks.
Well,
appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.